Hello and thanks again for tuning in. In this video, what we're going to be installing here is Schluter Ditra heat. So we're going to show you step by step how we install it. This is over a concrete slab. This is the Ditra heat TB, so it's about 5/16 thick. First thing we're going to do is we're going to dry fit it. Get everything cut in, and we use bags of thin set mortar just to hold the sheets in place while we're cutting the other ones. So we pre-cut everything, and then we're going to thin set it down. Okay, we got all the heat membrane down. You want to try to line up these lugs as best you can. Keep them straight as you can. Use it to run the cable. So we got all this down, about 300 square feet. Dry fit in. Now we're gonna mix up some thin set. Start setting this. Then we're gonna run the cable and skim it over. Okay, now when you're installing this Ditra heat TB, it's now called Ditra heat Duo, I believe. The Duo or TB is basically a fleece on the back of the membrane, so when you're going over concrete substrates, the concrete won't absorb nowhere near as much of the heat, and you're going to get more heat through the top of the tile. So that's a more efficient system, and you can all do it in one shot instead of putting down a layer of, say, a foam board and then a Ditra heat membrane above it. In this case, you could just put down the roll with the thermal break right on there. Now, when you're installing these mats, you want to make sure your thin set consistency is loose. Now, what I mean by loose is you don't want it like soup, but you want it definitely looser than you would normally do to set floor tile. So that's very important in order to get good coverage on the back of these membranes. Now with this Ditra heat TB, in order to get coverage on this Ditra heat Duo, some sections I had to pull back and then reapply again. I'm using what they recommend, which is a 1/4 by 1/4 trowel. But if I had to install this membrane again in this situation, I might even try a 3/8, a 1/4 by 3/8 square notch trowel and see how that gets for one shot of the coverage. Because what happens with that thermal break in the back of the membrane there, it kind of acts like a sponge and absorbs the thin set. So it's harder to get good coverage. Schluter says it doesn't have to be perfect because they know how the functionality of it works with the thermal break. But, you know, obviously you want to get as good coverage as possible. That way the membrane doesn't ever move around. Now, I'm spreading out my thin set here. As I always say in all my videos, any type of substrate you go over, you always want to key it in with the flat side of the trowel. Now, some people will skip this step, which sure you can, but what's going to happen is you're not going to get nowhere near as good of a bond as you would when you use the flat side. When you use a flat side, everything is getting filled in one shot. When you use that notch side, the areas between the notches are basically just floating over the substrate, so you're not pressing it in as well. So always key it in, get a good bond, and then notch it out. So here's the rest of the process of us installing the membrane. Okay, now as far as what thin set to use when you're installing the Ditra Heat Dual over concrete substrate, Schluter recommends an unmodified, which we have used in this case. We also use a modified. So in my opinion, either one will work. Just make sure the most important thing is that the thin set is in a loose consistency. It's very important. So concrete substrate, in my opinion, unmodified, which Schluter recommends, or you can use a modified, which I will use a highly modified thin set, or an unmodified, a premium. Now when you're going over plywood, you want to use a modified always, every time. Just keep that in mind.
Okay, now we got the cable ready to go. The mat's all down here. All fins headed down. Now we're gonna start running this cable. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna test the wire. Got this megometer right there. Alright, so the first test is conductor resistance test. Red and black wire. .75.
That's within 10%.
22.70. It's going to vary because the temperature, they say. Good, now the conductor and ground braid continued test. Connect one of the two power leads to the ground braid, which would be this one. Oh well, same thing. Okay. Now the insulation resistance test.
Okay, now for the insulation resistance test, now you're going to definitely need this megometer or another megometer. They're not inexpensive, I can tell you they are expensive. So if you do them though, you're going to get the full warranty with it. So you basically leave your clamps where they were, put on another setting, put it on the setting the instructions say, and that reading should read well too. Overload. So make sure you do that and put in the log.
Now we just got to test the sensor. Okay. Overload. Set the multimeter for resistance of 10K plus minus 2. .6. 7.0.
Okay, now we're ready to run our cable. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna come right where the thermostat's gonna be. You're gonna come out there, and you're gonna have the little piece. You're gonna have to cut that big black piece into the. We have to recess that into the membranes. You have to cut that out. So you put that down, mark it, cut it out. Second step, our room here is more than 10 feet, so I'm marking about 9.5, 10 feet. You're going to have to do a jog right there or start running the cable back the other way. That's what Schluter recommends. Now you want to stay about 3.5 inches away from each wall. In this case, we did 6, so we have enough cable for the whole room. When you're going around any type of plumbing, any type of heating, things like that, you want to make sure you look in the handbook that you're proper distance away from those places. So run the cable. We like to use a wood float. This is a mud float. Presses in nice. You want to make sure it's recessed in the membrane, not sticking up, so when you set tile, you don't nick it. And that's just how we install it. Okay, another thing we like to do, if time permitting, we like to pre-filled in membrane with thin set, and we like to use a grout float. It keeps it nice and tight to the membrane so you don't get a thin layer the next day. So you could do this. This doesn't have to be done, but in my opinion, it's going to help, you know, protect the cables, and when you're setting tile, you're not going to go through as much thin set. So another tip for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please comment and send us a message if you have any questions whatsoever, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.